He scrubbed the floors of a Navy base in silence, just a janitor to most who walked past him. But when a young SEAL mocked his rank, he simply lowered his eyes and let the insult fall like dust at his feet. No one knew the truth behind those quiet hands or the battles his heart had survived. Not until a 4-star female general walked in, recognized the calm in his eyes, and froze the entire base with a single command. Sometimes, the greatest warriors wear no uniform at all. And sometimes, respect arrives in silence. Stay with me until the end. His story deserves to be heard. Before we begin, if stories of honor, kindness, and second chances speak to your heart, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring more healing stories to life. Now take a deep breath. Let's step into a world where quiet heroes still walk among us. Before the sun kissed the horizon, the little house on the edge of Willow Creek Base stirred with quiet life. In the pale light of early dawn, Benjamin Carter stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing long, dark hair back into a simple tie. His reflection stared back, strong jawline, worn eyes, a face that had seen storms most men never knew existed. There was no pride in his expression, only a calm acceptance and a softness that appeared only when he exhaled. He folded his work shirt, faded green nothing special, and slipped it on button by button. A janitor's uniform. Ordinary, invisible by design. And yet beneath the fabric lay a body carved by years of silent discipline, scars mapping a life no one here remembered. That was how he preferred it. "Daddy," the tiny voice floated from the hallway. Ben turned. Bella stood barefoot, hair messy, hugging her stuffed rabbit like it was a life vest against the morning's tide. Her eyes big, warm brown. Her mother's eyes blinked as she yawned. Ben's entire world softened. "Morning sunshine," he whispered. Bella shuffled toward him and lifted her arms, silent request. Ben leaned down and scooped her up, settling her on his hip. Her tiny fingers brushed his collar. "You smell like coffee," she mumbled. "That's how adults survive mornings," he replied with a quiet chuckle. "Someday you'll understand." "Never," she declared, face scrunching. "Cocoa forever." Ben carried her to the kitchen table. A little pink backpack sat there, and beside it a lunchbox. He packed every night turkey sandwich, apple slices, carrot sticks, and a tiny sticky note. "Be kind today." "Love, Dad." He set Bella down and knelt to brush her hair. Head still, he teased. "I am still," Bella argued, "very much not still." "You're wiggling like a puppy." She giggled. The sound could melt ice. Ben tied her hair gently. His large hands worked with precision, the same steadiness once used to secure breeching lines and tourniquets. Now they held hair ties and snack bags. It was strange how life transformed. Strange and strangely beautiful. He had once stood in places where orders echoed like thunder and breath could get lost in the sound of gunfire. Yet here in the quiet, with Bella's laughter filling the kitchen, he felt more alive than any battlefield ever made him feel. When he finished, Bella turned and studied him with solemn eyes, far older than her 8 years. "Daddy, yes, Bug." "Why don't you be a soldier anymore?" she asked softly. "You were a hero." His breath stalled. For a heartbeat, the kitchen dimmed, and he saw flashes, faces of men calling out for cover, sand whipping through the air, a hand slipping from his grip into forever. He blinked, pushing the ghosts back into the shadows where they belonged. Ben placed a hand on Bella's cheek. "I just need to be your hero now." Bella smiled slowly, trusting completely, and wrapped her arms around him. "You already are." There were medals once tucked in a box beneath old letters. There were commendations no one outside a closed room could speak about. And there was grief, quiet, unclaimed, buried deep beneath humility. But Bella didn't need medals. She needed breakfast on time, and someone to shield her heart from storms. The rest didn't matter. By 6:30, they stood by the old pickup truck. Ben held Bella's backpack, and she bounced in place, excited for school. The world hadn't yet learned caution. Kindness still came easy to her. It gave Ben hope. It reminded him why he walked away. He buckled her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Be brave. Be kind. You too, Daddy." The drive to school was short. They sang softly to an old country radio station. At drop-off, Bella leaned toward him before leaving. "Will you come early today? I'll try." "Promise." Ben paused, then nodded. "Promise." Bella waved all the way to the door. When she disappeared inside, the weight came back. The quiet air felt heavier. Ben inhaled deeply and turned the truck toward the naval base. Willow Creek Base, orderly, rigid, full of salutes and ambition. Men here carried titles, ranks, reputations polished like boots on inspection day. Ben carried a mop bucket. At the gate, a young Marine guard saluted out of habit before realizing who he addressed. The salute dissolved awkwardly, replaced by a nod. "Morning, sir. Mr. Carter." Ben gave a calm smile. "Morning. Have a good one." No sting, no bitterness. There was a strange peace in being unseen. Ego belonged to another lifetime. Inside the halls, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ben wheeled his cleaning cart across the waxed floors. Soldiers rushed by, voices, crisp boots, striking firm rhythms. A few nodded politely. Most didn't see him at all. His mop swept quietly cloth, gliding like memory across tile. Floors needed cleaning just like weapons once did. Routine was routine, just different tools now. As he worked, he hummed a lullaby Bella loved. The melody echoed gently in the wide hall, one peaceful note in a building built for war. In the janitor's closet, later, he knelt, tightening a valve on a leaking sink. Water dripped in slow rhythm. He worked with calm precision. Suddenly, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Laughter, young, confident, brash. The kind of sound soldiers made before life humbled them. Ben stood and wiped his hands. His shift had just begun, but destiny already stirred outside that door. Beyond the stainless handle, a world of rank, reputation, pride, and youth waited unaware that hidden beneath a janitor's uniform was a man who once led shadows through fire and brought brothers home in silence. Soon, mockery would meet humility, and the quiet man pushing a mop would remind a room full of soldiers that true strength never needs to raise its voice. He took one steady breath. Then he pushed his cart forward. The floor gleamed behind him, silent proof that even unseen hands can leave something better than they found it. And somewhere in his chest, beneath scars and stillness, a heartbeat whispered what Bella believed without question. Heroes don't retire. They just choose different battles. The rhythmic thrum of boots hitting the mat echoed through the training wing of Willow Creek Base. The Navy SEALs in their gritty tan workout uniforms and weighted vests moved like a pack of apex predators, precision strength, and the careless arrogance of youth sharpened into competitive edges. Ben entered quietly, pushing his cleaning cart. His presence barely stirred the air. To most of these soldiers, he was a fixture, like the polished floors or the overhead lights. Functional. Forgettable. He didn't mind. He had seen young warriors before, strong, hungry, full of fire. They needed their fire. He hoped they learned to temper it before life tempered it for them. He approached the far side of the room, mop in hand, careful not to interrupt drills. The base required cleaning at all hours. Battlefields didn't wait for sunshine. Neither did dirty floors. As he worked, voices rose across the room, laughing, panting, adrenaline still humming from training. "Hey Cole, you breaking your record today? Or crying again?" someone teased. A grunt. "Shut up, Torres. That last run was rigged." Daniel Cole stood at the center of the group, towering slightly over the rest, broad shoulders, cropped blonde hair, intense jaw eyes, burning with restless ambition. The kind of man who measured himself by rank and respect. The kind who believed both were earned loudly. And Daniel noticed Ben first. He smirked. Careful, fellas. Floor's gotta be spotless for royalty here. A few heads turned. The laughter shifted curious sharp, waiting to land somewhere. Ben dipped his mop again, unfazed. He'd learned long ago that silence could be a shield. A sword, too, if used right. One seal whispered not quietly enough. He's always here. Creepy man. Another chuckled. Bet he failed basic. Probably cried and quit. The words didn't hurt Ben. He'd been called worse. By enemies who meant it. Daniel stepped closer. Hands on hips, sweat glistening across his brow. Hey, old-timer. Ben paused, lifted his eyes. Calm. Steady. Morning. Daniel gestured around. You like the scenery? Must be weird, huh? Working where real warriors train? A ripple of laughter followed. Ben simply resumed mopping. Everyone contributes. Daniel's smirk widened. Yeah, sure. Hey, boys, salute the mop master. Keeper of floors. Guardian of dust bunnies. More laughs. Harmless to them. A sport. But mockery always said more about the one speaking. Ben wrung his mop, still quiet. A younger seal freckled, and trying too hard to impress chimed in. Maybe he used to be someone. Maybe he lost his nerve. Daniel grinned. What's your rank, janitor, huh? What were you? Laundry sergeant lieutenant of the trash brigade somewhere deep inside a ghostly echo stirred, but Ben kept his breathing steady, his expression mild. I clean floors, he said simply. Daniel leaned close, mocking sincerity. Nah, you used to be something, right? Come on, tell us. Give the boys a story. Ben looked at him, not with anger, but with a quiet understanding Daniel wasn't ready to recognize. Not every chapter needs to be read aloud. The room hushed for a moment, something in his tone cutting deeper than raised voices ever could. But pride rarely lets silence win. Daniel scoffed. Cryptic janitor wisdom. Cute. He nudged the mop bucket with his boot. Water sloshed. Mild annoyance flickered across Ben's face. Not anger, just a tired sigh at immaturity. Daniel caught it and grinned triumphantly, mistaking composure for weakness. You know what, guys? Maybe he needs a reminder that this is a SEAL facility, not story time. That's when Daniel shoved him playful on the surface, but sharp with ego beneath it. It wasn't a hard push, not by military standards, but it was disrespect, loud and public. Ben's body reacted before thought formed. Years of training slept lightly. His hand shot up, not violent, but firm, instinctive, precise. He caught Daniel's wrist, midair pivoted, and shifted weight. In a blink, the SEAL found himself bent slightly off balance, not restrained, just stopped. A quiet, controlled demonstration that said more than force ever could. The room froze. Breaths held. Boots stilled. Daniel stared, stunned by how effortlessly the janitor had neutralized him. His Adam's apple bobbed. What? The hell was that Ben released him, gently stepping back as though nothing had happened. Sometimes steady hands learn steadiness the hard way. A murmur rippled through the group. Surprise, confusion. A spark of respect buried beneath ego but sparked nonetheless. Daniel rubbed his wrist, blinking. Where'd you learn that Ben picked up his mop? Cleaning floors keeps the mind clear. He paused, eyes far away for a second. And sometimes, it helps you stand your ground. The phrasing landed like a stone, dropped into still water, quiet, rippling deeper than expected. Before anyone recovered, the door swung open. Boots. Officers. Then silence fell like a command. A crisp voice carried through the room. Attention! The SEALs snapped straight, shoulders squared, spines stiff. General Caroline Brooks entered balance of grace and steel ribbons glimmering on her uniform presence, sharp enough to cut air. The kind of leader forged not from glory, but sacrifice. Her eyes scanned the room and landed briefly on Ben. Something flickered there. Recognition. No, impossible. But she saw something in him that others missed. A stillness, a weight, a quiet gravity that didn't belong to men who mopped floors. Daniel swallowed, suddenly aware of how small arrogance looked under true authority. General Brooks spoke voice calm, but blade sharp. Gentlemen, today we discuss discipline, humility, and what true strength looks like. Her gaze slid to Ben again, just a second, but enough to pull breath from the room. Daniel's jaw tensed. Confusion warred with discomfort. Ben lowered his eyes, offering a nod of respect, not to power, but to character. No rank announced him, no uniform decorated him. Yet for a heartbeat, the air in that war room felt different around him. Less like a janitor. More like a man who'd once walked through storms and returned quieter, stronger, unbroken, in ways nobody here could yet understand. And soon they would learn. The clang of metal on metal and the sharp hiss of controlled breathing filled the gym. Sweat slicked the mat's air thick with the familiar musk of exertion and ego. The SEALs continued drills under the watch of instructors, but energy had shifted since the quiet janitor had stopped Daniel Cole's shove without breaking a sweat or raising his voice. Ben resumed mopping, but every young operator in that room tracked him with new eyes, whispering, guessing, trying to fit him into a box their minds could understand. Janitors didn't move like that. Janitors didn't have reflexes trained in silence and violence. Janitors didn't. Again, Daniel commanded, suddenly voice too loud, chest heaving not from the workout, but from something heavier. Bruised pride, fresh confusion, fear disguised as anger. He marched toward Ben again. His friends exchanged looks. This wasn't teasing anymore. It was a wounded ego looking for blood. Ben kept his gaze, low mop, sliding left to right in slow strokes. Let it go, son. Son. Daniel's jaw clenched. Don't call me that. Ben exhaled, tired, not intimidated. You don't need to prove anything. The SEAL laughed, sharp, brittle. That's where you're wrong. Around here, respect is earned. Respect is lived, Ben corrected gently. Not demanded. Something inside Daniel snapped. The room held its breath. He lunged, not clumsy, not childish. It was the kind of fast, explosive movement trained men made when instinct overruled thought. But where Daniel saw movement, Ben saw angles. Where Daniel saw challenge, Ben saw a young man still learning the difference between strength and power. Ben didn't think he remembered. His mop dropped, clattering softly. He stepped aside, guiding Daniel's momentum past him, with a hand that barely touched, yet controlled everything. Spine-aligned weight shifted gravity borrowed, not forced. Daniel spun off balance, but not thrown. Ben caught his arm, rotated a wrist, leveraged the elbow, gentle, precise. A maneuver not meant to humiliate, only stop. Then came the moment, still suspended. Daniel froze, bent at the waist, unable to move, unless Ben allowed it. Silence thundered. No pain, no force. Just control so effortless it erased doubt. Ben leaned close enough that only Daniel could hear him. Anger narrows your world. Humility widens it. Then he released him. No shove, no flourish, just calm release. Daniel staggered backward, pupils wide, breath sharp. He stared at his arm as if discovering a weakness or a lesson for the first time. Ben picked up his mop voice, steady. Walk taller than your pride. A ripple traveled through the room. One SEAL murmured, almost reverent. That wasn't basic training. Another whispered, "That was operator-level control." Ben kept mopping. Daniel swallowed, throat-working. He opened his mouth, no words came out. His chest rose. Fell emotions clashing behind his eyes. Humiliation, awe, fear, curiosity, resentment. But before anyone could speak, heavy footsteps echoed again. General Caroline Brooks re-entered this time. Alone, had tucked under her arm, eyes focused with military precision. She carried command like breath, effortless expected. Everything stilled. Her gaze swept the room, lingering where Daniel stood, posture shaken. Then her eyes landed on Ben, and stayed there 1 second longer than protocol required. "Training session continues," she said calmly. "Discipline is measured in self-control, not volume." Sharp words pointed as a knife, but no one dared look at Daniel. Caroline's steps echoed toward the far wall, a file tucked under her arm, but her attention slid back to Ben just as quick as a heartbeat. What she saw there, stillness, humility, a weight she recognized all too well, made her pulse hitch for reasons she would never admit aloud. Ben didn't bow, didn't flinch, didn't try to be anything for her gaze. He simply respected it, eyes lowered like a man who understood hierarchies, but did not worship them. Daniel forced himself upright, face-burning voice cracking as he muttered, "Sir, ma'am, General permission." To Caroline lifted a hand. "Focus on your training, Petty Officer Cole." Daniel snapped shut like a steel locker. She turned slightly to Ben. "Carry on, Mr. Carter." Ben nodded once, not meek, not submissive. A man who knew exactly who he was, with or without a title. He returned to cleaning, mop gliding in steady arcs, as if nothing monumental had happened, as if the room hadn't just seen rank and ego crumble against quiet experience. Around him, whispers returned quieter, tinged with cautious awe. "Did you see he moved? Like, no way, he's just—" Torres nudged Daniel. What unit was he in? Daniel didn't answer. His throat was too tight with realization, the kind that rewrites judgment. He stared at Ben, sweat cooling on his skin. Not weakness, not failure. He had just collided with someone who had walked through fires deeper than training pits and came out silent instead of loud. Someone who could crush him, but chose not to. Someone who fought wars most men never knew existed and came home to sweep floors instead of demand recognition. A ghost, in plain sight. The training resumed around them, but for Daniel, nothing felt the same. Each punch thrown by his teammates echoed a truth he hadn't learned. Yet strength wasn't volume. Strength was restraint. In the corner, the janitor continued his work. A mop, a bucket, a quiet that unsettled the very foundation of pride. And on a clipboard across the room, General Brooks began writing notes, not about drills, but about a name she had thought the world lost long ago. Benjamin Carter. The floor gleamed, the soldiers sweated, pride shifted, and a small, unseen fracture formed in the armor of Daniel Cole's certainty, cracked not by force, but by grace, the kind of crack where humility grows. The double doors to the war room swung open again, but this time the air changed with them. General Caroline Brooks didn't enter rooms. Rooms yielded to her presence. Silver stars glinted against her pressed uniform shoulders, squared jaw carved with the kind of discipline that only decades of service could forge. Her stride held authority, not arrogance. Her gaze carried weight, not intimidation, though few could distinguish the difference when she looked at them. Conversations died instantly. Boots snapped together. Backs straightened like iron bars pulled upright by invisible cables. General on deck, everyone saluted. Everyone except the man with a mop. Benjamin Carter merely paused, lowered his gaze, and offered a subtle nod, humble, respectful, but not subservient. The kind of gesture a warrior gives another warrior, in a world too loud for rank. General Brooks noticed. She noticed everything. Her gaze swept across the room, assessing, dissecting. A leader doesn't only command troops, she reads souls. That was why people followed her, and why enemies feared her. Then she saw Daniel Cole. His posture looked tight, jaw clenched, wrist still subtly sore from the brief, silent encounter with the janitor. Shame hung around him like a crease in a uniform invisible to most, glaring to her. Petty Officer Cole, she called. Daniel swallowed. Ma'am. Why is your stance unstable? Daniel stiffened further. No excuse, ma'am. A flicker of something passed behind her eyes. Disappointment, or curiosity, or perhaps memory. Her attention slid toward the corner. Toward Ben. He continued mopping, neither hurried nor shaken, as though the presence of a 4-star general meant the same to him as a quiet morning breeze across still water. Unthreatened, unimpressed, unbothered, like a man who had already stood before higher stakes than medals and marble-floored command halls. General Brooks spoke, voice calm, but sharp. Carter. Ben looked up, eyes gentle but unreadable. Ma'am. What is your duty here, janitorial maintenance general? A few SEALs smirked, thinking the exchange would humiliate him. In truth, the way she watched him steady probing suggested she suspected much more than the title on his badge. She hummed thoughtfully. And in that capacity, you maintain order, cleanliness, and discipline in this facility. Yes, ma'am. His voice held no sarcasm, only truth. And do you patrol training areas often? As needed. She nodded again, as though checking boxes only she could see. Her eyes softened for a split second, a glimmer of recognition or recollection, or perhaps grief. Yet it disappeared as quickly as it came. Carry on, she dismissed gently. But the moment wasn't finished. A cocky young SEAL, eager to recover Daniel's pride, snorted and muttered too loudly. Imagine reporting to a janitor. Silence cut the room again, not loud, but sharp as steel through cloth. General Brooks turned slowly, eyes locking onto the offending soldier. Step forward. Boots shuffled suddenly, less confident. The SEAL swallowed and obeyed. In this command, she said, voice low but resonant. We judge men by conduct, not by job titles. Her gaze flicked toward Ben again. And respect is not reserved for rank. It is earned through humility and service. Heat flushed across the young SEAL's neck. Yes, ma'am, he stammered. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Respect built on volume collapses easily. Respect built on presence stands forever. Dismissed, she said, then turned back to Ben. Thank you for your work. A simple sentence. But in a military base spoken by a 4-star general, it carried more gravity than a medal. Ben nodded respectfully. Just doing my part, ma'am. She studied him a beat longer, eyes narrowing, not in suspicion, but in thought. Soldiers trained to read enemy movements. Generals trained to read human truth. And something in him, the stillness, the dignity, the shadow lurking behind quiet eyes, spoke to the part of her that knew ghosts had names, scars had stories, and heroes didn't always stand on parade grounds. There was something else too distant, fragile as a first snowfall familiarity. Not of face, but of pain. She had seen that same look once in the mirror after a folded flag rested in her palms. Loss recognizes loss. Ben broke eye contact first with Grace and returned to cleaning. But the room felt different now. The SEALs didn't look at him as a janitor anymore, not fully. Suspicion slithered with awe, curiosity tangled with unease. Daniel especially couldn't shake the feeling crawling up his spine that he had touched the edge of a life he didn't understand. General Brooks moved toward the front of the room, but her steps slowed once, as if she had to force herself not to look back. "Continue training," she commanded, and just like that, order resumed. Weights clanged, feet thudded, voices barked cadence. But the energy had changed shape, like wind shifting right before an unseen storm rolls in. Ben wrung out his mop water, rippling in calm circles, the only peace in a room full of noise. He had wanted a quiet life. He had built it with steady hands and sacrifice. But quietly isn't the same as invisibly. Some truths refuse to stay buried, especially around those who know where to look. He finished mopping his section and began wheeling his cart toward the exit. As he passed, Daniel's voice broke through softer this time. "What? Were you?" Daniel asked. Ben didn't stop walking, didn't change expression. He simply answered with the gentleness of a man who had already learned not to cling to the past, a man doing what he had to. And then he left, leaving a room of elite warriors suddenly feeling young. The midday sun cast thin golden beams through the tall windows of Willow Creek Base, warming the waxed hallway floors and cutting sharp lines across the walls. The training wing had settled drills transitioning into equipment checks and quiet conversations. The earlier tension lingered like dust in sunlight, visible only when someone paid attention. Ben pushed his cart toward the gear storage corridor, mop and supplies rattling softly. He moved with unhurried rhythm, the kind of pace earned only by those who no longer lived under the tyranny of urgency. In the hush of this wing, even footsteps sounded respectful. A young SEAL, Private First Class Jacobs, emerged from the equipment cage, a box in his hands and panic in his eyes. The box shook slightly, and his grip tightened to keep it steady. His voice cracked. "Sir, sorry, Mr. Carter. Could you help?" Ben turned. "What's wrong?" "One of the crates split." "I didn't see it had a loose board." Jacobs's voice wavered. "If this stuff spills out, Sergeant Major's going to have my hide." Ben nodded once. No judgment, no lecture, just quiet willingness. "Let's fix it." Jacobs sagged in relief and quickly began kneeling to right the crate. Ben joined him, rolling up his sleeves instinctively. The fabric slid past his shoulder, revealing skin that normally stayed hidden under worn fabric and silence. A single moment changed everything. A glimpse, then stillness. On his shoulder, etched with precision and history, sat a tattoo. A black falcon diving through shadows surrounded by 11 stars and a lightning bolt, a mark not seen by ordinary eyes, not decorative, not vanity, a designation. Ghost unit, a unit never named in public, a whisper among Tier 1 operators, a rumor in special warfare corridors, a myth told quietly among soldiers who had seen the world's darkest corners. Jacobs froze, his breath caught, his eyes widened as understanding spread across his face like thunder rolling across the horizon. From down the hall, Daniel Cole turned the corner in mid-conversation with 2 teammates. Whatever he was saying died on his tongue when he saw Jacobs's expression, and then saw what Jacob was staring at. The room's oxygen seemed to thin. Ben realized what was exposed. He paused, slowly pulled his sleeve back down. Not embarrassed, not fearful, just accepting. Daniel's voice emerged, softer than before, hollowed by realization. That symbol. That can't be someone dropped a dumbbell in the gym across the hall. Metal ringing like a bell, signaling a silent truth finally spoken aloud. Jacobs whispered, "They say that unit doesn't exist." Ben met his eyes, steady calm. Good policy. A hush spread down the corridor. Voices stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned, trained eyes locking in place. Words swept across the room without being spoken, the kind of recognition no schooling could teach and no arrogance could dismiss. Then came the sound, authoritative footsteps. Crisp, clean, rhythmic like precision clockwork. General Caroline Brooks reappeared, as if fate had choreographed the moment. Her gaze scanned the hall, and then landed on Ben. She froze. The color shifted subtly in her face. Not shock. Recognition. Confirmation. Memory wrapped in silence. Her eyes saw more than a tattoo. She saw a chapter of history buried behind classified files and folded flags. She saw a man she thought the military machine had lost long ago. Her voice cut through the hallway like a blade unit at tension. Boots slammed. Backs straightened like lightning through steel. Daniel snapped to posture. Jacob stumbled to stand straight. Every soldier in earshot froze in formation. Ben, mop in hand, stood exactly where he was. General Brooks stepped forward slowly, every motion deliberate. Her eyes locked on Ben, not with command, but with reverence and weight. "Sir," she said quietly, voice trembling with respect that caught everyone off guard, "please identify yourself. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't protocol. It was honor." Ben lowered his gaze, not in submission, but humility. "Benjamin Carter, ma'am. Janitor." The hallway held its breath. Daniel's throat bobbed. Someone whispered something like a prayer. A passing officer stopped mid-step, sensing gravity even without context. Caroline Brooks inhaled sharply. Something fragile flickering through her eyes. Grief, relief, and something else, awe. She took one step closer. "That isn't all you are." Ben didn't flinch. "It's all I need to be now." General Brooks's jaw clenched. For a moment she looked as though she were fighting back a war's worth of unshed words. Memories pressed at the back of her throat. Faces she once saluted, coffins she once saluted over. Ghosts came when certain marks surfaced. The hall stayed deathly silent. Then she turned, voice ringing with a power earned in fire. "Any man who serves with humility," she said, "deserves respect." Her stare flicked toward Daniel and Jacobs, not in anger, but in reminder. They bowed their heads instinctively. She returned her gaze to Ben, a softer tone, now the kind one uses for someone they owe more than thanks. "Carry on, Mr. Carter." Ben nodded once. No pride, only peace. He lifted his mop again. The janitor returned to his work. The warrior returned to his chosen life of quiet purpose. But nothing, not air, not rank, not hearts, was the same. Daniel finally exhaled barely a whisper. Ghost. And somewhere behind her, steady command, stare Caroline Brooks, felt something loosen in her chest. A knot of years finally unwinding a shared silence, understood only by those who had carried the same weight. Not fear. Not suspicion. Reverence. Respect earned not by rank, but by sacrifice unseen. The base remained still for a long time after. A legend had walked through their halls in janitor boots, and they had almost missed him. Evening settled over Willow Creek Base, like a soft, tired sigh. Training fields emptied shadows stretched long across concrete, and the echoes of cadence marches faded into distant memory. The day's adrenaline washed away, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet hum of duty. Ben wheeled his cleaning cart down the final corridor of his shift, his movements slow, deliberate, as though his bones understood exhaustion deeper than muscle. The mop rhythm kept him grounded. Swish, lift, ring, repeat. A ritual of simplicity. A small piece carved out of a world that once demanded everything. A door clicked behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. Mr. Carter came a voice measured and low-steady, as a drawn blade, soft as evening rain. General Caroline Brooks. Ben straightened, but not in fear. Respect guided his spine, not rank. General. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but weighted, like two soldiers recognizing each other across a battlefield, neither wants to revisit. "You didn't report to my office," she said lightly. "I wasn't summoned." Caroline stepped closer, not imposing, but present. The hallway lights caught faint lines of fatigue around her eyes, lines earned, not given. Most men, when I look at them that way, she murmured, find themselves compelled to clarify their credentials. Ben's lips curved in the smallest, quietest hint of humor. Ghosts don't brag. A faint breath escaped her half-exhale, half-laugh, half something she hadn't felt in years. So it is true, she whispered. You were one of them. Ben stared at the floor for a moment, then leaned his mop against the wall gently. I served. A long time ago. Caroline's jaw tightened. Ghost unit. Deep black off books, unacknowledged, even inside JSOC. Her voice lowered as if speaking secrets that had no home in fluorescent light. I thought they were rumor. They were designed to be. Designed to disappear. Ben lifted his eyes, calm, unwavering. Designed, so others didn't have to die. Caroline's breath faltered, not from shock, but from understanding too raw to hide. She had worn command long enough to recognize truth shaped by loss. How many missions, she asked quietly. Ben shook his head. We don't count missions, only names. Silence again, the kind that held ghosts of fallen comrades standing in the space between them. Caroline swallowed hard. For a heartbeat, she was not a general, but a woman who had once handed a folded flag to a stranger whose knees buckled when he took it. Her voice softened. You carry them still. Every day. A crease formed in her brow, not pity, but empathy, the kind born only from watching too many caskets draped in stars. You left, she said. Voluntarily. Yes. Why, Ben exhaled long, slow, steady. Because I promised someone I'd come home. And stay. Caroline blinked like light had flickered unexpectedly across memory. She had seen soldiers return only for duty to drag them back until duty broke them. But here stood a man who had walked away before the war could take more than it already had. You have a daughter. A soft smile touched his lips. Bella. She's 8. She thinks Coco is a constitutional right. Caroline's chest warmed despite herself. Children have their own laws. She's my peace, Ben murmured. I'd trade every medal, every mission, every drop of reputation I ever had to be the man she sees when she looks at me. Caroline's throat tightened. For a moment she saw her husband smile again. His jacket draped by the door boots left ready for the next shift, a shift he never returned from. Sacrifice had shaped her life. Here stood the man who chose not to let it shape his daughters. Most men chase glory their whole lives, she whispered. Ben shook his head. Glory is loud. Peace is quiet. I needed quiet. Caroline looked at him, not through him, not past him, but at him. Truly. A human seeing another human beneath stripes, scars, and silence. Your burden must be heavy, she said gently. It was heavier before I learned to set it down each morning, he replied, and pick it back up only when needed. She nodded slowly. I could have used that wisdom years ago. Ben held her gaze steady and respectful. War leaves marks, even on generals. A flicker passed across her face, pain disguised as memory. My husband was a commander. Afghanistan. He didn't come home. She paused. For a long time I thought if I kept wearing the stars, I could carry us both. Ben's voice was soft. You carried him longer than the world ever asked you to. Caroline inhaled sharply, eyes glistening, not with tears, but with truth. No soldier should walk alone, Ben continued quietly. Not in war. Not after. Caroline broke her gaze, first staring down the empty hallway, like she could see all the ghosts lined up at attention waiting to salute her grief. You know, she whispered, voice steady but trembling at its edges. You're the first person in years who's spoken to me as if I'm not my rank. I'm speaking to the person who had to become that rank, Ben answered. There's a difference. their eyes held for one suspended heartbeat, longer than rules allowed. Then Ben lifted his mop again, breaking the spell with gentle practicality. "General, I'm just here to do my job, same as you." Caroline nodded, but this time she didn't see a janitor standing before her. She saw a man who had walked into darkness willingly to keep others in the light. A man who chose love over legacy daughter, over doctrine, healing over heroism. A man the world would never understand because he did not need it to. "I won't interfere with your privacy," she said quietly. "But Mr. Carter, if ever you find the weight return, my door is open." Ben dipped his head. "Thank you, ma'am." She turned to leave, her boots echoing faintly. Before she reached the end of the hall, Ben's voice floated softly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your husband." Caroline froze, not because he said it, but because he meant it in a way only someone who knew loss at eye level could. She didn't turn back, didn't speak, but her shoulders lifted once with a breath, as if a small corner of her armor had finally allowed air inside. When she walked away, her steps were just a little less heavy. And behind her, Ben resumed mopping, a quiet warrior in a quiet hallway, keeping floors clean and ghosts company one quiet stroke at a time. Saturday mornings in Willow Creek felt different from duty days. The base slowed. Salutes softened. Boots still marched, but with lighter urgency. For most, it was a breather. Laundry calls, home weekend cleaning. For Ben Carter, it was the day that mattered more than medals ever had. It was Bella Day. He drove his old pickup through town with the windows cracked, a hint of country guitar floating in the breeze. The back seat held a pink backpack, a soccer ball, and a lunchbox packed with love, disguised as string cheese and apple slices. At 8:01 a.m., precisely 1 minute late by Bella's standard, he pulled up to a brick school building. Children streamed out, running toward waiting parents, with shrieks and backpacks bouncing. In the middle of the chaos stood Bella, clutching her stuffed rabbit and scanning the parking lot like a lighthouse searching for a familiar ship. The moment she spotted him, her face lit like sunrise. "Daddy." Ben stepped out, kneeling just in time for her to crash into him, arms flung around his neck, rabbit thumping against his shoulder. Her joy was unfiltered, unashamed, absolute. He held her tight, breathing in the scent of crayons and strawberry shampoo. "There she is, my favorite human." "I missed you so much," she declared, pulling back with dramatic flair. "It's been 4 hours. That's like forever in school time." Ben laughed, lifting her into the truck. Fair point. They buckled up. Then Bella leaned forward, serious as a senator. "Adventure Day," he placed a hand over his heart. A Carter never breaks tradition. She squealed. Adventure Day usually meant simple things. Pancake swings at the park, maybe feeding ducks by the lake. Ordinary moments. Sacred moments. The kind of days that heal quiet wounds. They drove to a small diner off base, checkered curtains, old veterans nursing coffee, local kids trading baseball cards. The waitress knew Bella's order before she sat down: chocolate chip pancakes, extra whip. As Bella colored a kid's menu, Ben sipped coffee. Worn jeans boots, dusty navy base parking sticker on his windshield. He looked like any working dad trying his best. No one here knew what shadows once marched behind him. To him, that anonymity tasted sweeter than syrup. Across town, General Caroline Brooks stood in a quiet grocery store aisle, holding a basket instead of a briefing folder. She had traded her uniform for jeans and a soft cream sweater. Even without medals and insignia, her posture remained straight, disciplined. But her eyes, they searched shelves like a woman learning how to live outside strategy briefings. Her path crossed Ben's purely by coincidence or fate, if fate favored the humble. She entered the diner for coffee to go her first attempt at blending into town life and froze mid-step. Because there he was. Benjamin Carter wasn't mopping a hallway. He wasn't hiding battle scars under fluorescent light. He sat in a vinyl booth cutting pancakes into bite-sized stars for a little girl smiling at him like he was the entire universe packaged in one person. Bella glanced around, noticed Caroline, and waved enthusiastically like she'd known her forever. "Hi, Lady Caroline." Blinked, taken off guard. Generals rarely got greetings like that. She lifted her hand in return, awkward but genuine. "Hello?" Ben turned. Surprise flickered across his features, followed quickly by warmth and humility. "General." "No rank today," she replied softly. "Just Caroline." Bella gasped theatrically. "Daddy, is she a princess?" Caroline's lips parted in shock before soft laughter escaped her. "I suppose some days I feel like one." Ben chuckled, eyes gentle. "Caroline, meet Bella." Bella thrust out a syrup-sticky hand. "I'm 8. I like books and rabbits and pancakes and Daddy." Caroline accepted the tiny handshake, not with officer formality, but with care, kneeling slightly to meet Bella's height. Strong list of priorities. Bella squinted at her. "You look like you think a lot." Caroline blinked. "Is that so?" Bella nodded, tapping her chin dramatically. "People who think a lot forget to smile sometimes. Daddy does that too." Ben tried to hide a smirk. Caroline felt something tug in her chest, unexpected, unfamiliar. Warmth, softness, a thread tying her back to a time before funerals and stars on her shoulder. "It's good advice," Caroline murmured. "Thank you, Bella." "You're welcome." "Want to sit with us?" Caroline hesitated. Generals didn't sit. They commanded. They observed. They stayed separate to protect hearts and order. But this wasn't a command center. It was a booth, a pancake sanctuary. And suddenly being separate felt like loneliness disguised as duty. "If you don't mind," she said. Ben nodded, voice steady. "We'd be glad to have you." As Caroline sat, Bella leaned in and whispered loudly, "Daddy doesn't have many friends." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Thank you for announcing that to the general public." Caroline smiled something, easing a knot loosening. "Friends can be rare," she said gently, "and precious." Ben looked at her, quiet understanding passing like a handshake between invisible scars. Caroline glanced at Bella again. "Do you know why your father left the military?" Bella nodded confidently. "Because he loves me more than battles." Silence fell, tender, haunting, true. Caroline's breath trembled. She didn't need intel reports. No briefing file could have said more. Ben didn't leave because he broke. He left because he chose love over war. "I lost someone," Ben said, softly meeting her eyes. "I wasn't losing her, too." Bella hugged his arm, oblivious to the heaviness she had lifted. Caroline swallowed grief, flickering sharp and sudden but gentle this time. He would be proud. "Your daughter." Ben held her gaze. "And your husband would be proud of you." Her fingers curled around her coffee cup. "Some days I don't feel like it." "That's usually when we are," Ben replied. Bella popped up. "Can we go to the park now?" Ben smiled. "Yes, Bug." He stood and offered a small nod to Caroline. "It was good to see you." She nodded back, something shining behind her composed exterior. "Likewise." As father and daughter walked away hand in hand, sunlight hit them at the doorway, painting them in gold like a portrait of peace earned rather than given. Caroline sat still a moment longer, breath deepening. She had known soldiers her whole life. She had commanded heroes, buried heroes, honored heroes. But she had never seen one choose life so fiercely, so quietly, so beautifully. And the truth settled into her like dawn. Breaking strength wasn't always loud. Bravery wasn't always force. Sometimes the greatest warriors weren't the ones who stayed, but the ones who walked away for love. And suddenly, her coffee tasted sweeter. Monday dawned with the crisp chill of a coastal wind sweeping across Willow Creek base. The flagpole rope clinked softly, a distant bugle. Call rolled through the quiet morning, and another day of discipline began. Young SEALs jogged past in formation, voices strong rhythm steady. But one man ran alone. Daniel Cole. His strides were uneven. Not physically, his conditioning was flawless, but mentally something staggered. He wasn't running to train. He wasn't running to impress. He was running to breathe, to outrun shame that settled heavier than any rucksack he'd ever carried. He heard the whispers now. He felt the eyes. The janitor humbled him. That tattoo, that unit. Who is he really? These weren't the whispers that bruised egos. They were the whispers that reshaped respect. And the sharpest cut wasn't humiliation. It was realization. Daniel had mocked a man he didn't deserve to speak to. When his run ended, breath sharp, chest heaving, he didn't go to the locker room. His feet moved without permission straight toward the community housing district, and there he found him. Benjamin Carter stood outside a small home, kneeling beside a little girl tying her shoelaces on the porch. That gentle morning light wrapped around the pair like a blessing, father and daughter, a world so far from battlefields and commands that it felt sacred. Daniel stopped at the curb, watched. Ben corrected Bella's knot softly, laughing when she pulled the lace too tight and made a dramatic groan. She tapped his shoulder like a tiny sergeant. He saluted her, back proud, playful. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't softness. It was love held like armor, not shield. Daniel had spent his life believing strength meant steel-tight posture, fearless eyes, unbreakable reputation. But watching Ben their quiet, calm human, Daniel faced a truth he had never been trained for. Strength was not loud. Bella spotted him first, waving with innocent enthusiasm. "Hi, running man," Daniel forced a breath, raising a hand. "Hey there." Ben stood, eyes meeting Daniel's. No hostility, no triumph, only steady stillness. "Morning," Ben said, voice even. Daniel swallowed hard. "Morning, sir." He flinched the moment it left his mouth. Ben's brow lifted slightly. "Sir doesn't live here," Ben said quietly. "Just a dad getting a shoelace right." Daniel nodded, cheeks hot. "Right." "Sorry." Another beat of silence. Bella hopped into the truck with her backpack humming to herself. When the door shut, Daniel stepped closer. "Mr. Carter," he paused, struggling. "I owe you an apology." Ben studied him not suspiciously, not critically, simply present. "You don't owe me anything." "That's not true," Daniel insisted, voice low. "I disrespected you. I judged you." His voice broke slightly. "I thought being loud meant being strong." Ben's gaze softened, not with pity, with recognition. "We all learn it somewhere," Ben replied, "and we all unlearn it somewhere too." Daniel exhaled. "I want to do better." Ben nodded once. "Then start today." Daniel blinked, relief mixing with humility. Just like that. "Forgiveness isn't slow when someone truly asks for it," Ben said. "Pride is slow. Growth doesn't have to be." Daniel swallowed. "How did you get here? How do you stay so balanced?" Ben looked at Bella through the window, her tiny face pressed against the glass, waving. "I chose peace every day. For her." His voice lowered. "Some men find peace in battle. Some find it in quiet. The wise ones learn to respect both." Daniel followed Ben's gaze. "I don't know what peace looks like yet." "You will," Ben replied, "if you want to." Daniel nodded. Slowly. "I do." Ben motioned toward the truck. "We're late for school drop-off, and she gets more fierce than your drill sergeant." Bella held her rabbit up like a battle standard. "He's right." All three laughed, awkward, then genuine. Before Ben opened the truck door, Daniel asked quietly, "Was it hard?" Leaving the uniform, Ben paused, hand resting on the door handle. Harder to let go of who I thought I needed to be than to walk away from where I was. Those words landed like a stone in Daniel's chest, not heavy, but anchoring. "Thank you," Daniel whispered. Ben nodded. "See you around base." As the truck rolled away, Daniel remained on the sidewalk, hands on his hips, breath visible in the cool air. He had come expecting shame, maybe anger. Instead, he found something he hadn't realized he'd lost in the noise of rank and ambition guidance: humility, a path forward. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat on a bench near the base's small chapel. He never came here. Faith wasn't his usual battlefield, but today quiet mattered. He watched Ben from afar finishing his custodial tasks. A soldier limped past haunted eyes staring at nothing. Ben paused, placed a gentle hand on the man's shoulder, and spoke softly. No judgment. No orders. Just presence. Later, Daniel saw Ben hand cash discreetly to a struggling older vet outside the pharmacy, then kneel to tie the man's loose bootlace with the same tenderness he gave his daughters. No applause, no witnesses, no rank needed. Ben lived honor instead of demanding it. Daniel leaned forward, elbows, on knees, heart heavy and hopeful. The world suddenly felt bigger, and he felt small, but in a way that made him want to grow. He whispered to himself, not ashamed of the shaking in his voice. I mocked a man I should have been learning from, and for the first time in his life, Daniel Cole understood that real warriors weren't defined by battlefield scars, but by who they chose to be after the fighting stopped. That evening before lights out, Daniel knocked on a door. His sergeant opened it. "What do you need?" Cole. Daniel stood taller than he ever had, not in spine but in spirit. "I'd like to volunteer for community mentorship," he said. "Kids outreach, weekend rotation." The sergeant blinked, shock turning into something that looked suspiciously like pride. Approved. Daniel nodded, once a quiet vow forming. He would change. He would learn. And someday he hoped he might earn the kind of respect Benjamin Carter never asked for, but carried anyway. The sun sat high over Willow Creek Base, casting clean, disciplined shadows across the concrete. Another afternoon rhythm hummed. Boots, marching radios, crackling distant engine drills. Ben finished polishing a hallway floor to a mirror shine, Bella's little drawing peeking from his pocket. 2 stick figures holding hands under a giant sun, labeled in uneven handwriting, Daddy and Me. He was humming the tune she loved when the sirens shattered the quiet. A slicing metallic howl. Then, alert. Alert. Chemical breach sector Bravo. Voices erupted, doors flung open, soldiers sprinted, some grabbing gear, others shouting orders. Training drills felt different when alarm tones held panic instead of rehearsal calm. Ben froze for half a second, just long enough to sort instinct from fear. Sector Bravo. Storage and med wing. Young recruits. New staff. Bella's class sometimes toured that area for Military Appreciation Wednesday. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. He moved, not like a janitor, like a man whose body remembered how to live in adrenaline without losing clarity. Inside Sector Bravo, chaos reigned. The chemical containment vault's security lights strobed red, washing panic across young faces. A new chemical control tech, barely 22, stumbled out, coughing mask, half-secured, shaking. Valve breach pressure, build-up containment alarms. Malfunctioning, someone's trapped inside. Another soldier swore. Seal it off, the tech's voice cracked. My buddy's in there, a lieutenant barked. We don't have protocols for. Ben stepped into the circle. Quiet, calm eyes, clear as winter sky. Where the tech pointed, trembling. Ben didn't run. He strode controlled, fast, precise, the kind of movement that told trained eyes he'd done this before. Daniel Cole arrived at the same moment, face pale, but determined. Let me go with you. Ben shook his head, not unkindly. Not today, son. Then he grabbed a forgotten mask from the wall hook, fitted it with muscle memory precision, and disappeared inside the containment corridor before command could form a sentence. Inside, alarms blared like furious ghosts. Vapor hissed from a cracked valve. The air stung thick hard to breathe even through the mask. A young private lay on the floor, dazed, breathing fast, panic fogging his eyes. Ben crouched beside him, voice even. "You're okay." It burns my eyes. Focus on my voice. Ben lifted him gently, hand behind the neck for support. Slow breaths. "We're walking out." The private tried, choked, stumbled. Ben bore his weight effortlessly, guiding him along the slick floor. Halfway, the door trembled external seals, preparing to lock down. Ben's jaw tightened. Too soon. He shifted, turning the young soldier toward the exit. "Eyes on me." "Stay awake." The soldier nodded weakly. Ben hit the final stretch as external lockdown clamps began sliding into place. A second soldier outside yelled, "It's closing." Carter's still in. Ben pushed the private through the gap. Hands reached, grabbing the fallen soldier and dragging him clear. The steel barrier slammed shut with a thundering finality that left Ben inside. Gas vent hissed behind him. He exhaled once slow. Not panic. Calculation. His hand brushed the wall until he found the emergency override mechanical old school. A relic. Good! Digital systems fail. Steel never lies. He braced his shoulder, twisted the manual lever with the strength of a man who once lifted men twice his size from hostile rubble. It groaned, resisted, then gave with a metallic roar. The door cracked open just enough. Hands reached. Daniel's voice broke through Ben. Now. Ben ducked, rolled through the opening just as the emergency clamps tried to bite shut again. He rose smoothly, breathing steady. Eyes calmer than anyone's deserved to be after nearly dying. Daniel stared at him, awe flooding his face. How did you?" Ben placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Steady grip. Steady presence. Everyone gets scared, but fear doesn't choose the outcome. We do. The rescued private gasped from the ground, still trembling. Bean knelt. "You did fine," he said softly. "Breathe. Count to 3 with me. 1, 2, 3. The kid's shaking slowed. Tears rimmed his eyes. Fear, relief, shame. I froze. Ben squeezed his arm. "You lived. That's step 1. Courage comes later." Outside, footsteps thundered. Command strode in. General Caroline Brooks. Her voice cut through the air. Status: a medic snapped, 1 casualty saved. No fatalities thanks to her gaze, found Ben. For a suspended breath, the world narrowed to 2 people standing in the center of urgency. Unspoken understanding passed between them. No rank, no floor polish, no stars. Just recognition. She stepped closer. "Report Mr. Carter." His tone was simple. Pure truth. Young soldier needed help. I was closest. Daniel added, voice thick with respect. He didn't hesitate. He walked in like he'd done it 1,000 times. Ben looked at Daniel, calm but firm. Most people can. They just don't know they can until they must. A medic helped the private up. The young soldier clutched Ben's sleeve. "Thank you." Ben shook his head. "Thank yourself." Caroline watched silently, jaw tight. Emotion flickered in her eyes. Pride, gratitude, grief, admiration. She had seen heroism, but this quiet, reluctant, humble heroism cut deeper. "You put yourself at risk," she said quietly. "Correct risk," Ben replied. "Calculated. I don't rush anymore." Caroline's voice lowered to a near whisper. "But you still step forward." Ben turned, not to bask, not to linger. Just to leave and check on Bella's drawing in his pocket to resume being nobody. I step where I'm needed. Daniel swallowed, voice filled with something like faith, even when nobody's watching. Ben paused. "No such thing as nobody," he murmured. there's always someone worth stepping for. Caroline felt her breath tighten. That sentence lived inside her chest like scripture. Before anyone could speak again, Ben lifted his cart handle, a simple janitor's tool, and rolled it away with the same quiet dignity as always. Behind him, Caroline's voice softened, barely audible. He didn't just save a life today. Daniel nodded slowly. He changed one. And for the first time in his military life, Daniel Cole stood straighter, not from pride, but from humility. Far from the alarms and steel doors, Bella waited outside after school, rabbit in hand, watching the horizon. She knew without knowing why that her father always came back, not because heroes return, but because fathers do. And Benjamin Carter walked toward her, through the fading light, tired and peaceful, ready to trade gas alarms for tiny hands and bedtime stories. War was noise. Love was quiet. And he chose quiet every time. Night settled gently over Willow Creek, the base lights glowing like ordered stars against a velvet sky. The day's alarm had faded into routine evening murmurs, boots, slowing radios, quieting flags resting still. But inside a corner house just off base, something restless stirred. Benjamin Carter stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his simplest button-down shirt. Not military neat, not casual, sloppy, simply sincere. His reflection looked different tonight. Not because he had changed clothes, but because something in him felt less enclosed. Dinner. With the base's highest-ranking officer. And yet it didn't feel like protocol. It felt like returning to a door he once closed and never thought to knock on again. A soft tap sounded behind him. Bella peeked in, hair damp from her evening bath pajamas, patterned with stars, and Rabbit's toothbrush still in hand. Daddy Ben turned, kneeling to wipe a stray foam bubble from her cheek. "Yes, Bug. You're smiling weird." He blinked. "Weird," she nodded. "Like when you hide ice cream in the freezer and think I don't know." He chuckled. "You weren't supposed to know. I always know." She pointed her toothbrush like a general giving orders. "You nervous?" Ben hesitated. Bella's eyes, unfiltered, pure young, yet somehow ancient, saw through him more cleanly than truth serum. Maybe a little. "Why, you're bigger than everyone." Ben smiled. "Being big doesn't make things less scary." Bella considered this, then nodded like a wise monk. "When I'm scared, I hold your hand." She offered hers. "You can borrow mine until you come home." He took it gently, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you. I'll bring it back safe." She grinned. "And bring dessert." "Yes, ma'am." General Caroline Brooks opened her front door to the soft clink of wind chimes. She had changed too, not into command presence, but into a woman who didn't want her rank to breathe for her tonight. A simple navy sweater, hair loosely tied back. No medals, no insignia, only honesty. Her home was modest, warm. No grand trophies or flags, only framed landscape photos, a few shelves of books, and a single picture in the hallway of her younger self, with her husband, both in uniform, smiling toward a horizon that never promised what came next. And now, she stood still, watching Ben approach through the porch. Light sleeves, rolled simple shirt, a calm presence in a world of rushing. If someone told her a month ago she would anticipate dinner with a janitor, she'd have dismissed them. But now she understood titles and souls rarely matched in size. "Mr. Carter," she greeted with a soft smile. He shook his head politely. "Ben." "Please." "Caroline," she said, offering her name like an open hand, not a credential. He stepped inside. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, roasted vegetables, soft rolls. Food that tasted like care, not ceremony. They ate without small talk, without trying. Silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like fresh air after too long wearing armor. Caroline finally set her fork down. I suppose I should start by admitting something. Ben looked up steady. I didn't invite you here as a general. I know. She blinked. You do, Ben nodded. You looked like someone who needed quiet company more than command. Her breath caught. She didn't confirm it. She didn't need to. Truth sat between them gentle. Everyone sees the stars, she murmured. They forget the weight. Ben's voice softened. Stars come from pressure. Caroline smiled, faint and sad. And sometimes they burn alone. Ben held her gaze, not pitying, not rescuing, recognizing. I had a team once, he said quietly. Brothers who would have died for me. Some did. You carry them, she whispered. It wasn't a question. Every day. His voice thickened slightly. But I don't carry war home. Bella deserves mornings, not ghosts. Caroline sat back. I envy that discipline. I buried myself in duty after Michael died. Work was easier than remembering he wasn't coming through the door again. Ben spoke softly. Love leaves shadows as deep as light. She swallowed. Do you resent it, leaving the field? Becoming, she hesitated, ordinary. I didn't become ordinary, Ben said. No pride, only truth. I became present. There's nothing ordinary about showing up for someone every day. Caroline stared down at her plate. I forgot how to show up for myself. You can relearn, Ben replied. Everyone can. Silence again. Comfortable, but aching. Then Ben asked quietly, do you ever miss who you were before all this? Her voice broke on a breath. Every night. Ben nodded slowly. Then you didn't lose her. You just haven't spoken to her in a while. Her eyes shimmered. Not tears, but the edge of them. War didn't win tonight. Vulnerability did. She stood suddenly. There's something I want to show you. Ben followed her to the hallway. She stopped at the photo, the one with her husband smiling at a future he never lived to see. Ben studied it, not with military analysis, with a man's understanding. He was a good man, Ben said quietly. The best, Caroline replied, voice steady but fragile. And I've been afraid to admit that letting someone else matter doesn't dishonor him. Ben exhaled softly. Love isn't a battlefield. There's enough room in peace for more than one memory. Caroline looked at him, breath catching. And what about your heart, Ben? He looked away, jaw flexing gently. I don't trust it yet. But I want to. Caroline stepped closer. Not romantic, not desperate. Human. Honest. We walk slowly, she whispered. Together, maybe. No promises. Just steps. Ben nodded. Slow is safe. Slow is real, she corrected softly. They returned to the table. The meal had cooled, but something else had warmed. Not love. Not yet. Hope, gentle, unhurried breathing like dusk, turning to dawn. When Ben rose to leave, Caroline walked him to the door. Thank you, she murmured. For dinner, for not being afraid of the quiet. Ben paused at the threshold. Quiet saved me. And tonight, she said softly, it saved me too. He nodded once and stepped into the night. As the door closed, both understood something rare had just begun. Not romance forged by urgency, but connection born from healing. Two wounded hearts, learning to breathe again. Slow, steady, real. The morning of the ceremony arrived with the kind of sunlight that felt like a blessing, warm, steady, unflinching. Willow Creek Base was polished, and radiant uniforms, crisp. Boots, aligned flags catching a gentle patriotic breeze. Rows of chairs faced a small stage, draped with dark blue cloth. Brass gleamed, metals glistened. Pride hung in the air like a sacred hymn. Today was Veterans Honor Day. Not the loud parades of cities, not the televised speeches of generals. This one mattered more small, solemn for those who carried service deep in the quiet corners of their hearts. Benjamin Carter didn't wear a uniform. He stood near the back with Bella beside him, her hand small and certain in his. She swung her legs from the wooden folding chair, Bunny tucked under her arm. She looked up at her father every few seconds, like a guardian whose job was to make sure he kept breathing. "You okay, Daddy?" she whispered. He nodded once. Always. He wasn't, but he wouldn't burden her with ghosts. Ben had expected today to be about other men, men who stayed, who climbed ranks, who didn't walk away when the battlefield followed them home. He respected every one of them. He had no idea his name was written into the ceremony program. General Caroline Brooks stood offstage, hands clasped behind her back, uniform immaculate, but expression softer. Not the steel that commanded battalions, not the ice that shielded pain. Something human, warm, steady a heart, remembering how to speak without armor. Daniel Cole stood near her chin, up shoulders squared with quiet humility. Last night, he had polished his boots twice, not for appearance, but because respect requires preparation. The ceremony began with a prayer. Heads bowed. Silence thickened with gratitude, sacrifice memory. Then came 3 medals awarded to active duty soldiers. Applause, calm and respectful. Finally, Caroline stepped forward. No script in her hand, no aide beside her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice clear, steady, resonating across the courtyard. "Honor cannot always be seen in ribbon or rank." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Ben blinked once. Something familiar tightened in his chest. Some heroes. Caroline continued, "Do not stand on stages. They walk hallways at dawn. They carry wounds no surgeon can reach. They trade battles for bedtime stories, missions for morning lunches, war cries for quiet whispers of hope." People shifted, curious. Daniel's gaze flicked to Ben, throat tight. Caroline's eyes found Ben across the sea of uniforms. Today we honor a man who served this country in silence and continues serving every day in ways most of us overlook. Whispers stirred now. Heads turned. Ben's pulse froze. Caroline lifted a paper, not notes, but a military record unclassified only by her authority. "Benjamin Carter," she said, voice steady with reverence, "formerly Chief Operator Special Warfare Ghost Unit." Gasps rippled like wind across water. Young SEALs stiffened. Officers leaned forward. The commanding sergeant who once joked with Daniel felt his spine lock. Bella looked up in confusion. Daddy Ben's jaw clenched gently, humbly. He squeezed her hand. Caroline continued. "A man who walked through flames we will never read about, who carried brothers through fire, who left glory behind, not for failure, but for love." A soldier in the second row stood instinctively respectfully. Another followed, then another. Within seconds, the entire base rose to their feet. A silent salute, no orders given. Respect had chosen itself. Ben swallowed. Emotion thick and raw scraped his chest. He rose slowly, holding Bella's hand. He did not stand tall like a soldier. He stood firm like a father, grounded, imperfect whole. Caroline looked at him with unguarded warmth. "Mr. Carter." "Ben, you taught us that the highest honor is not worn. It's lived." She nodded once deeply. "And today, this base salutes not your battles, but your peace." Applause thundered, yet somehow still reverent, the kind that vibrates in bones, not ears. Bella's eyes widened, sparkling. She tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, they know." Ben knelt, voice thick, forehead to hers. "They know what matters most." "What's that?" "That being your dad is the highest rank I ever earned." Her small arms wrapped his neck. "And I promote you every day." Tears pricked his eyes, are honest, unashamed. After the ceremony, soldiers approached one by one, not crowding, not gawking, just paying respect with quiet handshakes, murmured gratitude, and the kind of nods only warriors trade when they recognize one of their own. Daniel approached last. He didn't salute. He didn't speak right away. He simply extended his hand. "Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." Ben clasped it firmly. "You earned your own strength. I only held up a mirror." Daniel's voice cracked. "I won't waste the lesson." Ben nodded once. "Then we're good." As the courtyard emptied, Caroline approached, hands clasped behind her back. Not habit, but hope holding its breath. "You handled that better than most generals." "I know," she said softly. Ben exhaled. "I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to give it," she admitted, a gentle tremor beneath her composure. "But courage recognizes courage." Bella tugged her father's sleeve. "Daddy, is she your friend?" Ben met Caroline's eyes. Something tender flickered between them, not rushed, not dramatic, but deep as steady earth. "Yes," he said quietly. "She is." Caroline kneeled to Bella's height, voice soft. "Your father is a remarkable man." Bella nodded proudly. "I know. And he's mine." Caroline smiled, real unguarded. "And you're his greatest mission." Bella considered this, then offered her bunny for inspection. "This is Captain Fluffy. He keeps secrets." Caroline accepted the introduction solemnly. A critical skill. Bella nodded, firmly satisfied. "We like you. You make Daddy's eyes soft." Caroline's cheeks warmed. She stood, meeting Ben's gaze. "She's observant. She gets that from her mom," Ben murmured. "And she gets her stubborn hope from me." Caroline breathed deeply, voice low. "Hope suits you." Ben studied her, the strength, the ache, the quiet fire learning to burn warm again. "You too." Silence again, but the good kind. Not emptiness, but possibility. Two wounded hearts. Not rushing, just stepping forward. Caroline extended her hand. Not for a shake, for a promise without words. Ben took it. Slow. Safe. Real. Behind them, flags lifted in the breeze. Ahead, a horizon not built on battlefields, but on breakfast tables and school drop-offs, dinners, and quiet conversations. Morning, coffee steam, and laughter, learning to return. War had shaped them. Peace would define them. Love, not loud, not sudden, would grow like dawn, gentle, certain, inevitable. And as they walked off the parade ground, Bella skipping between them, soldiers still watching in respectful silence, one truth settled over Willow Creek like sunlight. Some heroes do not return to command. They return to belong. And sometimes, that is the bravest thing a soldier ever does. Before we say goodbye, I'd love to know something from you. Where are you watching from today? Share your city or country in the comments. It warms my heart to see how far our family of quiet heroes stretches across the world. And if these stories of dignity, kindness, and silent strength speak to you, I warmly invite you to subscribe to our channel. Every subscription, every like, and every comment helps us keep bringing light, hope, and faith in humanity to those who need it most. Thank you truly for spending this time with us. Thank you for your kindness. And thank you for believing in good people, even the quiet ones the world often overlooks. Until the next story, take care, stay safe, and may peace always find you.